it feels to me like a good place to start for people who are just getting to know you. Is there a way that you would describe yourself that isn't tied to your injury or your pain story?
I really love that question because I feel like for this past year, that's kind of been my entire identity. And I haven't really been able to step away from it to actually be like, who am I without this? And I would say that I am someone who loves to chase life. And what I mean by that is I've never really been comfortable sitting still, and this is kind of the first time that I've been forced to do so by an external force like my body. But without this, I think that I don't really know who I am anymore in a way. And I think that it's not a loss of identity, but I think it's just the fact that I've done so much growth and changing this year that I am definitely not the same person that I was before this accident. But this accident is kind of all that I know now. And so I don't really know what life looks like away from it.
That makes so much sense to me. There's before accident and after accident. And so for people who don't know your story, would you be open to sharing what happened?
Yeah, so I was in quite a bad accident back in April of 2024. I was solo traveling in Thailand when a truck hit me while I was driving my scooter. It was a head-on collision, super messy, and I was super lucky to even survive the accident and even just walk away with the injury that I did. For 3 weeks, I went through 6 intensive surgeries, and I got to a point where I could travel home. And so now I have had 7 surgeries. It's been a year and a half later, and I have gotten to a place that I never thought I would be in. When I had this accident, I had always just really seen healing and injuries as like, you heal, you get back on your feet, and you're good to go. It's always been so linear in my eyes, and I had never seen anything different than the way that had been portrayed to me. I was told that I would heal, I would need one more surgery, and I'd be good to start walking, doing rehab, and get back to life. And now I'm just in a standstill because that's not really possible for me, and I feel like I'm just in this stuck point right now because I don't have the ability to move forward because my body is holding me back from something. And yeah, the pain is a whole other side of things that I really had no idea I would experience to this level. They wouldn't give me any pain medication for the first 48 hours of my injury because I had refused amputation, and so they were waiting for another hospital to come and pick me up. But in that time, I was left ignored. But I had learned how to disassociate from the pain itself because I didn't have any form of medication. I just stuck feeling that for days on end, and it was unbearable. So my brain did what it could to retreat. And after those 48 hours, those nurses showed up from that hospital that was coming to get me, and they shot me with morphine for the first time, and I didn't know if I was alive or dead at that point. And I remember looking up, and it just felt like angels were coming to save me. And then I was pain-free, and I was like, am I alive? Am I still here? Because I hadn't experienced my body not drenched in that amount of pain that's so consuming in so long. So that was a wild experience in and of itself. But
Wild feels like an understatement.
yeah, I guess it's crazy because when you sit in your own certain situation for so long, it's not big to you anymore. You know, people come up to me and they're like, you're so incredible for having gone through this and having the perspective that you do. But I'm like, you know what? If you were going through this, you'd probably be in the exact same place as I am. And I'd probably be saying the exact same thing as you are. Because unless we're experiencing it and living it ourselves, we can't compare it to anything we've ever done and anything we can imagine. Like, oh my God, when I was traveling, my biggest fear was being hit while I was on a motorcycle. I always said to my friends, I was like, I didn't want to get on one because I was so afraid of that happening. And I would see people that had it happen and be like, please God, no, never, don't let it happen to me. And it did. And I faced it head on because I didn't have a choice. It was either that or you give up where you are. And I think a big part of what people overlook in healing and accidents is that you're never prepared for it. You're just faced with it, and you use the tools that you know and you have to deal with it in any way possible, in any form possible. And you do it because you don't have a choice. It's either that or you give up on yourself.
I think it makes a lot of sense that you receive feedback from people saying that this doesn't feel like this feels larger than life, what you're going through. And then for you, in contrast, this is everyday life.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the way that you've shared your story on social media hits so hard, because it starts to take something that feels so inaccessible and break it down in a way that people can understand. But everything that's gone into this experience for you is such a personal thing. What made you decide to share your story on social media?
I really didn't want to for so long, and that's why I waited for that year and a couple months until I really, really felt like I was ready, because that initial fear of being seen at your lowest and at a place where you don't feel like yourself, it's big, and social media is a place of judgment. But I also knew that there was a side to it that I haven't experienced that I really, really wanted to, and I knew that it was out there. And I was in such a low point that it was almost just worth it. I didn't care anymore being seen where I was and people not understanding it or me having to explain myself. When I finally just stepped into it, that's when I really felt like it was mine, and I could honor it and speak on it. I had been in a place for so long of complete solitude and loneliness, because as much as you've got the support of your family and your friends, there's a level of understanding that will never be met that you will always crave. And that's almost just like, not that I'm so sorry you're going through this and is there anything I can do to help you, but just that, hey, I get it. It sucks. It's not easy, but it's gonna get better and you're not alone in it. And that was the biggest part for me, was that I was watching all of my friends live their life and go to music festivals and go to school. And so to watch all these people kind of like feels like you're behind the glass and it's just you, and everyone else can never fully comprehend it until you find the people that have been forced to go through it too. And I wanted to be that for someone, because the moment that I had that happen for me was the point where I felt like I could actually do this and stand up to this thing and not feel like I didn't want it to be true anymore.
What are people not seeing? Like, what is the part of what it feels like to sit in this day to day that you wish people understood better?
I think that the hardest part is still showing up when there's no part of me that wants to. And I'm still learning how to do that, because I'm coming out of one of those places right now. And I know that it's in those times when people need to see it that there is this different side. But I guess the real human part of it is like, no one wants to be seen at your lowest. Nobody wants to show the ugly parts when you're feeling ugly. I have a really hard time being honest about that when I'm in it, because it's not socially accepted and talked about to really feel that and be okay and sit in it.
Are there things that you wish that people did or said that would be helpful?
I think we're all taught from a very young age to don't say the wrong thing. You don't want to disrespect that person. You want to be respectful. And so it's really funny sitting from this perspective and hearing the approaches that people get with really just wanting to embody that, but then seeing the way that they actually do voice these things. It's like people will come up to you and say, I'm so sorry you're experiencing this, and you're so strong for going through this. If I was going through this, I would never be able to go through that. I would never be able to be as strong as you are. I think when you hear that from this perspective, it almost does make you feel lesser than, even though I know that that's never, ever the intention. But when you hear that, it isolates you in a way that makes you feel like you're on your own and no one else can go through this and you might just have to break. And that's really, really hard, because people don't see that realistic side to healing, that it is, like when I was speaking before, that it is not linear, that it is not this straight line where you just get better.
I really like what you said about how these kinds of comments can be isolating, because I hear you in that they're really well intentioned. And when somebody says something like, oh my God, I could never go through that, you're so strong, what they're saying is, I can't deal with that. Like, these are maybe not what they're intending to say, but it's easy for it to land that way. And it has me thinking that, in general, a good principle is to think, like, when you're sharing something, what is your intended impact? Like, how is this supporting the person that you're speaking to?
I totally agree with you. And it's hard because you don't want to be the person to teach them when you're going through it. But I think that that's the one thing that you start to understand when you are on this side of it, is that no one has any clue. And I learned that the hard way when I watched a lot of people leave my life because it was too hard for them to stay. And in the beginning, I thought that it was a reflection of me. I thought it was a reflection of our relationship. And now, a year and a half down the line, I'm looking back from a totally different seat and perspective. And I really do see that it's nothing to do with me. It's the fact that they don't have the ability to stay during something so hard because they've never had to. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to sit in the discomfort of pain and not being able to move through it and having to deal with it constantly with no change. Because that is so uncomfortable. And I've seen my family in the discomfort of it. I've seen them react to me being in the same place from a month to 3 months down the line with no changes, with the expectation of so much change. And the assumption that just because I can do one thing on a weekend means I can do another thing the next weekend, even though that one thing took everything in me to get to, and it took probably a week of solitude to recharge from. And that's what's also not seen on that other side of it, of your friends and your family that want to stay and want to show up, that don't fully have the abilities to. And I used to blame myself, but it really has nothing to do with the person healing. They don't. You cannot force someone to be something that they're not and somewhere that they're not. Just because you are forced into this place of healing doesn't mean they were. And that was a hard acceptance for me as well, to be okay with that and then also forgive my friends for that as well.
It sounds to me like a series of micro griefs and losses. It's not just mourning what you're no longer capable of doing. There's also the micro grief of the day you wake up and you can't do as much as you could yesterday. And there's the friends that leave your life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's so much more. It's a whole universe that encompasses this one, what some people might see as this one loss. Mm-hmm. Would you mind sharing a bit more about what you've learned about all the ways grief and loss can show up in this journey?
Yeah. I like the way that you put that, because that's kind of exactly it. It's like, I think people have this expectation of loss is a physical thing. And I also had that idea and perspective on grief and loss. And when I lost the ability to use my foot, I was forced into a wheelchair, even though I had a physically able body. And I was basically just put in this place where I never ever thought I would be. Never had the tools to try and navigate it or learn how to. But I had no choice. And I almost was just launched into this idea of what I'm supposed to be doing to get better, but at the exact same time, I'm waking up every morning and crying and feeling so sad and so small because I didn't know that I was grieving my foot. I had no idea that I was grieving the loss of my body. I couldn't comprehend that I had suffered a loss, because in my mind, my foot was going to get better. it was gonna heal. It was gonna get back to 100%. That's what my doctors told me. That's what my surgeons told me. I was so stuck in that belief system that my body was like screaming at me from the inside out, and I'm like showing all these symptoms of anger and resentment and so much sadness, and I'm like breaking things. I'm getting angry in the middle of the day, which I've never ever done before. And there was all these aspects that my body was literally like, and I can feel it in my chest right now, it was forcing me to see, and I was so oblivious to it, and I didn't want to be. I really, really wanted to believe in my body and believe that I could get better. And I think that's the beauty and the power of shock and adrenaline and our minds really protecting our peace. And it was trying to do that for me in every way. And when I finally accepted the fact that I had suffered a loss and that I actually am not where I want to be, and I won't get there in a timely manner that I thought I was, and all these different aspects that took me out of control and made me just sit in the passenger seat. They're so hard to give the reins over, but once you do, literally, I think I cried for like a week straight, and I just had release after release until I had no more tears left. And after that, I finally felt like I could breathe again. And then I just sat and I let myself be sad instead of trying to fight it and get to the next point, instead of just like feeling the sadness that I needed to feel to accept where I was. Because that was the hardest point. I couldn't accept it. I literally could not accept where I was. That's why I could not feel any of the feelings that we're trying to get through. And once I did, it was just this peace that I had never ever experienced before. And that I was finally okay with where I was, and I felt empowered by it. And it was only when I finally let myself feel the grief that I had been fighting off that I could actually breathe and let that actually be.
I think it is so counterintuitive for so many of us, because leaning into the sadness feels like diving deeper into the problem, and yet it is the way through. I want to touch on identity as another component of this layered journey of grief and loss, because we started this episode talking about who you were before this accident happened and who you are now, and how they feel like entirely different people.
Mm-hmm.
What type of grief and loss have you been experiencing related to the old version of Dani?
Yeah, I completely lost myself for a really long time there, and I think that is because I had built up this idea in my mind that before my accident, I was exactly where I was meant to be. And I was doing everything right, and I was the version of myself that I wanted to grow old with, and I trusted that with everything in me. And it's crazy because now I literally would not change a single thing about my accident to go back to the old version of who I used to be. Because who I am today and the lessons that I've learned and the tools that I have and to the human being that I am, and I wouldn't change that for anything, because I don't think that I could live life without this Dani that has the knowledge and awareness that she does about the world and herself. And I'm so grateful for the lesson that brought that to me. As hard as it was, I needed it. I needed to go through it to be here and be who I am today, and to feel everything I do on such an intense level with so much more gratitude. Like, that wouldn't be possible without going through it. Instead of grieving the person that I used to be and treating it as a loss, kind of just realized how much growth I've done. And I didn't lose a version of myself. She has just taken so many different aspects of life with her now. It's like a baby tree that you leave for 10 years, and it's like, oh my God, there's so many leaves. It's like, yeah, you left it for 10 years. It's gonna grow. That's what happens. It's the same tree, but it's got so much more life in it now, so much more knowledge. And I think that's the biggest thing is I physically was grieving my body while my mind was also trying to understand that it didn't need to grieve itself. I thought that I had lost myself, and I hadn't. I just had to learn who that version was with everything that she learned now before she had stepped out into the world again, because I had gone through so much change and I didn't know how to implement any of it. So I'm like, who am I? I'm like, you're still you. You've just got a whole new toolbox to use now. And you got to learn how to use it. And I think that was the biggest difference for me in realizing that I didn't lose any part of myself. She's just better now.
What allowed you to give yourself permission to sit in it? Because it sounds like there was a lot of resistance at first, and then this period of acceptance.
You never, ever want to sit in the pain. Whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, it's so hard to give your body permission to literally feel it. And I had numbed for a while, and it was getting really, really easy. But I also was getting super depressed, and I was feeling that. And I think I got to a point where I subconsciously just started to understand that the more I push it away and try to control it, the worse it's going to get. And I also realized that there is nobody sitting in this but me. I'm the only one causing these wounds. And I think with that, and also with the place that I was in where I physically couldn't leave my house, I couldn't help myself, I couldn't make a meal by myself, I couldn't do anything for myself, I was just stuck. I think that gave me permission to feel everything I was pushing away, because I didn't have anything else to do, I had nowhere to go, I couldn't run away from myself. I couldn't distract, because every single time I did, it would just come back at me with full force. And it's not like I could get in my car and go hang out with a friend. It was just me and this pain. And at some point, avoiding it became more painful than facing it.
That's so well put.
Yeah, that gave me permission to finally sit down and feel it. I didn't try to control it. I didn't try to make sense of it or understand it or change it. I just let it be. And that was a really, really, really big thing for me, because I'm really bad at that. I was just like relinquishing control. But it just got to that point where there was nothing else to do. There was no other escaping that could be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we don't listen to our pain, it often just gets louder.
The body has really, really powerful and intricate ways of telling you. Because as much as we like to play pretend that we're not aware, or you push it aside to the back of your mind so you don't think about it, your subconscious is always aware. And it's always paying attention. And at least for me, I found that when I would shut down the pain, it would just show up in other areas of my life. It would show up loud and proud, and it would make itself known that it's like, hey, hello, I'm still here. You want to deal with me, or I'm just going to scream until you can hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll find a way. I think there's also, what I'm hearing from you is that your body knows like what it needs to process. Yeah. Like, you finally paid attention when you decided no one can go through this but me. And what does it look like to listen to what my body is trying to tell me right now?
Yeah, I finally stopped trying to control the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. If someone else is listening to this and going through any type of pain, whether it be physical or mental, grief, loss, a change in who they are today, what would you want them to know?
As painful and as messy as it is in the beginning, and as hard as it is to try and make sense of what you're going through, I want to promise that, and don't make promises lightly, but I want to promise you that once you do step in to that version of yourself that knows exactly what needs to be done, because you're not running away from everything that you want to be, it'll start to make sense. In a really weird way, your accident is going to start to make sense to you, and so is your healing, and so is the purpose of what you're going through. And only then can you really, really start to heal, because it really takes putting yourself first in every single possible way, which is really hard to do. And I think that when someone is facing an injury or grief or loss or something that they never had before, it's really easy to make excuses and to avoid because of the discomfort. But it's sitting in that discomfort until it's not uncomfortable anymore that really makes a difference.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's exactly where we don't want to go and exactly where we need to go, which is where it can help to have someone who can sit in the discomfort with us.
Yeah.
And you're right that like no one is going through your experience but you. I'm so grateful for you taking the time to sit down and share your experience with us, because it's such a vulnerable story. You're on your own journey right now, and not every day is easy, and thank you for making time for us on one of the days in the process.
Thank you. You honestly have made this call so amazing, and yeah, talking with you is always fun.